But that's strange. You're a mentality monster. That is your whole thing. Your whole thing is you're a mentality monster. That is like you are Mr. LinkedIn. That is your selling point. And to just be jogging, that was weird to me. It's not like anything I've seen. And that was the only thing for me where I was like, look, I'm a believer in you, but it was strange. It was concerning. And that's all I got. I'm sorry. I know he's your guy, but it really freaked me out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Monday Morning Manager. Once again, I am joined by Phil Casso, and once again, thank you to Freddie and Jordan for allowing us to be on the show, or on City Xtra's YouTube channel, I should say, not the show. A little bit less energy. I think it's been a frustrating stretch of 2 weeks now. I'm a little down, more down than I normally am. I like to think I'm a pretty positive influence in some type of City fan media, although I have a very small influence, but just curious to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I feel the same way, in terms of like our respective place in the city media landscape. I'm definitely the type to pour water on the situation when it's going bad or, downplay it a little bit. And while I do feel that way a little bit, like I honestly do feel like the performance yesterday, especially in parts of it, that first half mainly, were not as bad as, it's being made out to be online. Obviously, it's full meltdown, as is every time we lost. But it is a little different, and it feels a little different for me this time as well, just given the fact that, you know, we had discussed previously the highs that we had felt coming off of Wolves. Maybe we are back. Maybe this is the team that we've known for the past half a decade, better part of a decade. But it just feels different. It feels different. And I know it could just be that it's coming off of two losses and it's really easy to feel like, oh, well, things are different now. But it feels different just given that we don't have the security blanket that is this super experienced squad that we've had in the past. So these losses and the way that we're losing feel worse when we know, or maybe just because we haven't seen these guys as a collective operate to the high level that we had seen our past groups operate. So there isn't really the faith, inherent in me that we're going to come back from this. So yeah, it's a bit concerning. I think that it is an energy drain, like you said. It makes you feel down. I had a tough time, when you watch the full slate of games after your team wins and you feel so good. And then when you lose, you just don't even really want to watch. I had one of those games yesterday where it was really hard. It was like pulling teeth to watch the rest of the games because it really just took a lot of the energy out. So, hopefully this break that we're going into really revitalizes the squad, lets everybody get their more of their collective head together and around what we're trying to do as a group, and we can come out of the break with a lot better, team and more synergy in that regard.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of talk about wrapping your head around things, there's the result and then there's the performance. The result is terrible. This is not a team that City should be losing to. This is a team that, yes, I understand that under their new manager, under Hertzler, Brighton have played against City a lot better. It's also been one of Guardiola's worst ever City sides. So that's kind of hard. Brighton historically, and the way that team plays historically, maybe not right now, but historically is something that City are able to usually take advantage of with that openness and that kind of pressing. But from a results standpoint, it's terrible. But I actually thought the performance for the first 60 minutes, up until those 4 substitutions were made, were pretty solid. I don't think it was the best. They were wasteful. Haaland should have probably had at least one more goal. He had a few other chances. There was one that the header was a great save. He had a couple opportunities where he could have honestly put a better shot on target. And it's of the goals to score, it was an interesting one, honestly, for him, that particular finish. But I thought overall, City played fairly well. And I think that maybe Marmoush and Bob, if there was a little bit more, I don't know, cohesion between the squad, maybe that chance that they had midway through the second half goes through. But I thought they did a fantastic job of holding Brighton back for the most part until those substitutions came on. I'm just kind of curious what you thought overall of the performance.
Yeah, like you said, I think that we had some high performers and we had some people who didn't really live up to expectations. I think, like you said, with Holland, I think that I think it'd be a bit generous to him to say that he should only have one more. I remember quite a few chances to where maybe he didn't even get a shot on goal, but he was in good positions. The one where Marmoush sent him through clean on goal, those are
Yeah.
I hate to say that those are goals that I expect him to get because that is not an easy chance. But given his expectations and his status as the best striker in the world, I expect him to actually test the keeper, at least in positions like that and things like that. I think that our entire system is now built around him and getting those types of chances for him, and he has to capitalize. I mean, it's a lot of the same, criticism that I would have given to somebody as important as Kevin De Bruyne over the years. Yes, Kevin De Bruyne showed up every game and tried to create, but trying isn't good enough when you're this central figure for us. You have to succeed. Everything is built around you succeeding, is built to set you up to succeed. I think that honestly, his game has to go up a level, and especially with some of the transfer business going around with like ESEC and stuff like this, his position in world football and even in the league is very much up for grabs. I think that he needs to step it up. I think that the midfield was a bit questionable. I think Reinders had a shaky game, if you were to ask me, in terms of some of his dual winning and some of his composure in midfield and stuff like that. But also, like you said, I don't think it is all doom and gloom. Obviously, there were some good performances. Your Marmouche and Bob. I think Bob had some unlucky moments, but I think he was very much involved in the way that you would want him to be involved going forward. I think that he won a lot of his duels. He was very good on the dribble wide. He created chances. He had the pre-assist for the one that Marmouche ended up getting to Holland. And obviously, Marmouche had like three big chances created. He was a constant, outlet threat and stuff like that. He was really good linking up with Holland. So I think he was really good. I think it was a really mixed bag. And like you said, it isn't so much about the performance. We needed a result yesterday coming off of the Spurs game and we didn't get it. So everything is going to seem bad. So I think, like you said, performance, okay, middling up to the 60 minutes. I think that we actually dominated the first half, but the result is just so bad that it's going to taint everything that we see there.
Yeah, I mean, Holland is one of the first ever players. Shouldn't say first ever. Holland is maybe the only other player than Messi that I expect to like score whatever the chance is that he has. And that's not every chance, but the moment he goes through, I was just expecting it to be in the back of the net. It felt like he was trying to almost put the ball onto his right foot, which is strange because he honestly really tries to avoid using his right whenever possible. But it seemed like he was trying to get it onto his right foot and then he couldn't, and then just kind of like really awkwardly hit it with his left and just didn't really get a lot of power behind it. And it was something that I thought was particularly odd. And then, yeah, I thought Marmouche played well. I thought that it might have been his best performance of the three matches so far. I mean, he wasn't really a major factor in Wolves at all. I don't even remember if he came on for Doku, but he links up with Holland really well. He's one player that can link up with Holland really well. Bob seems to maybe start to be getting there, and obviously with the new midfield, it makes it tricky. I my main takeaway after those subs, it was how gassed City looked after like 70 minutes. Part of that, yes, there's new Brighton players on the pitch. Part of that is, this weird kind of preseason. But there were times where Rodri was walking around and not in like he doesn't need to run. He's like scanning and just walking and understanding. He just didn't have the energy at points to even jog, which to me was really telling, especially for someone like him who hasn't played for a year or barely played for a year. It really did seem like this is just a squad that is not even close to the level, which is what he said. Those are the comments that, Rodri made post game. So it's something where I guess I feel a little bit better of like they're not even close to the levels that they're at, and they know, or at least some of the squad knows that they're not at that level
Yeah,
yet.
and I thought that Rodri was actually quite good in possession when he had the ball yesterday. I thought it was really promising in terms of what he was able to provide. I don't think there was any sort of step back after the injury or anything like that on ball, which is definitely what we need. But like you said, with the exhaustion thing, it sure would have been nice yesterday to be able to bring on a Ryan Cherky for a Bernardo or to bring on a Phil Foden for a Reinders at some point, and to just not, or even a Savino in there somewhere, and to not have these options available, like you said, coming off of the shortened preseason to where they didn't really get time to build up match fitness and stuff like that. I Again, we're paying the price for somehow with this massive squad that we have to where there are battles all over the pitch for playing time. Seemingly, when you look at it on paper, we're again in a situation where we just don't have enough players, where we just don't have enough players in the positions where we want to change a game that we need. So coming off the international break, obviously Pep talked about this. They must come back healthy, he said, or something like that. They must come back healthy. We have to come back healthy, not only just for in-game adjustments, for some cohesion in training or cohesion on the pitch to build and things like that. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Wasn't really expecting us to be in this type of crisis, but there's a lot of like niggling injuries. I don't know what's going on with Vardiol. There's not really been any updates regarding him or anything like that. Somebody said they saw knee strapping on him. So, we'll just have to wait and see on if these guys are going to come back and if it's going to work out in that regard.
Yeah, it's a good point with the injuries because I mean Nico, Doku, Rico, and Ruben. Those are the four that come on. The other players that were on the bench: Ederson, Akanji, Gundogan. None of those three players are currently on the squad
Yeah,
anymore,
they're
and
all gone.
currently two are in Turkey, one's in Italy, and then Ake and Nico Gonzalez. So not a lot of options to kind of go with for this one match in particular, which I think does show why City looked so out of it and weren't able to kind of get a spark back. There just weren't enough bodies on the bench. Yeah, I thought Rodri played well. It feels better with him in there. And if you were to tell me going into it that, hey, Brighton are going to have one shot in the first half, and it's the first time they've done that at home in a decade, I would have thought that it would have been a comfortable City win. So I think the signs are there. Much like with Spurs, there are signs there, but that only matters so much. And oh, what's up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, how long is the fan base? How long is everybody gonna be comfortable waiting for signs? It's
Yeah,
before we go into full meltdown. It seems like we're on the very precipice of that already. I'm very concerned if the United game doesn't go the way that we need it to go, what it's gonna look like in the fan base. But we'll have to see that one when it
yeah.
comes, I guess.
United, Napoli, Arsenal can be scary. That's a spooky fixture to come back to, or group of games, I should say, to come back to. But 3 games down, 35 to go. A
Yeah.
whole lot can change, and I'm really just trying to save myself from really getting too worried. And I guess yeah, let's talk about heading into the international break. Your thoughts on the squad? Ederson out, Akanji's out. Gundogan seemingly, last I saw as we're recording this, is that it isn't a full like he's going, but it seems that the deal's accepted and he wants to go there. And Donnaruma's coming in. That happened as I went to sleep last night. Just want to know your thoughts on the squad and thoughts on Donnarumma coming in.
I'm gonna avoid the knee-jerk reaction here. I'm gonna try to avoid the knee-jerk reaction because actually coming into the season with no changes really other than, like you said, those people leaving and Donnarumma coming in, I thought the squad was great, if not overpacked with players and talent. So I don't want to come on here and say, "Oh, we messed up. We didn't sign this player or that player," because that's not how I felt a couple of weeks ago. And I think that once maybe the injuries come back around, like I was saying, maybe it will be a lot better. Maybe we will feel a lot better about the depth and stuff like that. Right now, it feels a little grim, like I said, because we are looking shorthanded, and maybe that's something we should have taken into account. Even though a lot of these players who are getting injured aren't injury-prone players, so hopefully we will hope that that clears up. Someone like Aiden Rees had like one injury in like the last 6 years or something. He comes in and gets injured right away. Hopefully things like that just don't stack up. But yeah, I feel good about the squad. I mean, honestly, if you were to really look at the depth across the board, I think that we'd be really happy if everybody was really healthy. I mean, you have your two right wings, your two left wings, two center forwards. If you're going to count Marmouche there, you have all your attacking mids. I think that we're stocked up in the attacking. Maybe not as good as Liverpool now, but as well as any other team in the league. So, and then in midfield, obviously, we're trying to shed players at the back. We're trying to shed players. Now we can go into another discussion, and if you think that these players meet the grade in terms of quality, especially at the back, I know that's a big debate right now. But for me, I think that I think that it's good, and I think that yeah, I think that we'll be all right going into the season in terms of just the squad depth.
I think that we can talk about the center back pairing in a moment. The Donnarumma signing and all, I am so confused. And it's not that, look, I am never a Pep out person. I will probably never be a Pep out person, and I think it is insane to even have that thought like cross your mind. This is confusing. It's just not what I've expected out of a Pep Guardiola side. I mean, look, Victor Valdez wasn't great with his feet, and that was also almost 20 years ago. So it's like a little bit different of a situation. But when you saw what he'd had with Neuer, he binned off Joe Hart, which honestly made sense. Joe Hart was not the keeper that he once was. As much as City fans were upset back then, he was no longer an elite keeper, which is why he quickly flamed out of professional football
Yeah,
after leaving City. And Ederson had come in. No one knew who he was. I remember there being podcasts from like the old City fan media days of like, there was no one that really knew. We were bringing in Brazilian people to kind of talk about him or Portuguese people to talk about him who had kind of seen him a little bit. And that is just what I have expected out of a City keeper. And for it to be so different, it is quite strange. But I trust if Pep is the person that bringing this in and he wants that, maybe he thinks that this defense is just not strong enough. Our transitional defense is just not strong enough. And it matters more to have someone that I trust that is going to be an absolute rock at the back. Although, to be fair to Trafford was, I thought, fantastic. Made a couple fantastic saves over the weekend. But it is a confusing one. But for right now, I'm trusting Pep. But I want to know your thoughts specifically with him.
yeah, I agree. I think it's I I've been a fan of bringing. I don't know. I'm a Donnarumma fan. I'm a fan of that style of keeper, the type of keeper that wins you these big matches and penalty shootouts, 1v1 saves when your defense is just broken. I find that your defense, no matter how good you are in the Champions League in the latter stages, you're going to get broken down by these better teams. So I find it extremely valuable to have a keeper who is super comfortable in these moments. But it is confusing because it is in our style. My only pushback to that and the people I don't know, I've seen a lot of people saying this is the end of Pep City being the way it is. This is the final nail in the coffin on our play style and stuff like that. I just have to ask the question of what is so different about the way that PSG played last year and their talent on their team to our players and our team right now. Are they that far superior in terms of their outfield players that they can make it work and win everything, win the Champions League quite handily in the end? And we are not going to be able to win a league season with him or win Champions League games. I just don't see it that way. I don't know if it's that big of a needle mover. Yes, there will be adjustments in terms of how we have to build up. We're going to have a I'm assuming we're going to have the both of the pivot sitting deep. It will be no longer the single pivot days. Obviously, I know PSG had Vitinha drop deep quite often to basically take the ball off of Donnarumma's feet. And that's something I could see us doing. That's something we even did with Ederson and Bernardo in years past against Liverpool high presses and stuff like that. That is not something completely foreign to our style of play. So I understand the concerns and I understand the confusion basically in terms of the style of keeper that we're bringing in. But I would just like to pump the brakes a little bit on the dooming. I see a lot of it from people in terms of, well, this gives us no chance. Well, and I just really don't see it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I Those are actually my favorite Bernardo games. Those were games I like when he was. It's seemingly the most important player on the pitch, dropping all the way back. Would do it against Tuchel's Chelsea as well. I like have very very fond memories of those performances.
And that's something that Ryan Cherky is also comfortable doing, that same type of role. So we have players that like doing that role. So I would just, call him a little.
There's one little thing you kind of teased, and I think it's meant to talk about it. And it's I guess our defensive line and center back pairing and how we line up there. I am a ardent Stones defender. I'm also a Diaz defender. You are a ardent Diaz defender. I don't quite know your thoughts on Stones, and I'm curious to see where this conversation is going to go. But I just want you to kind of the floor is yours.
I want to start this out by saying that John Stones is the most talented defender that City have probably ever had and maybe will ever have. play at the back in terms of all the things that he can do. With that said, the gun was jumped, in my opinion, after the Wolves match in terms of what we're seeing him provide this season. Honestly, I think that game bought him a lot of like I don't want to say like like plot armor in the fan base or something like that. Where it's like
Goodwill.
he's yeah exactly he's unable to be blamed for things and that's fine. Obviously, he's a very important player, but and he has been an important player for us for years. But so is Ruben Diaz, and that's where a lot of my issues come with this is that Ruben Diaz, the situation in the fan base with him feels a lot the same way it does with Kyle Walker last year in terms of I think it was more deserved for Kyle Walker in terms of the level of his performance and stuff like that. But in terms of the fan base deciding that, okay, this guy is the problem. So he's going to be the problem for every single thing that happens wrong. And I just really don't see it that way. I saw Stones. Obviously, DS was at fault in the Spurs game. He didn't win the header, but Stones slips. Stones plays them off sides, being a little bit negligent with the back line, and he escapes blame. And that honestly, that's fine. That's a combination of errors type of thing. And then the one yesterday really was the one that really kind of got under my skin a little bit more because Diaz had just come out of the pitch, and I just knew I was like, well, if we concede here, I know who's getting blamed for this one. But Stones, he just I don't know exactly what he was thinking. He pretty much had a free run at the ball, and he boots it straight into the attacking player and breaks the offside line as well. I saw some people saying that Stones is trying to play an offside trap, and I just really can't wrap my mind around how that would mentally work when you're playing the ball, but you're playing an offside trap. But yeah, I think that they have some things to work out. I think it's been very shaky between the two of them. I don't want to come off and say that it's all Ben Stone's fault. Obviously, they've been defending shakily as a pairing for quite some time. If you want to go even back into the couple of starts they had last year, I think it was a bit of a struggle as well. So I think that there's going to be some competition. I think Vardiel walks straight back into this back line. I think that one of them will immediately drop out as soon as he's back. And then you have to look at Kusanov. I was very impressed again with what I saw. He's a
So
little
impressed.
yeah, he's a little erratic on the ball. I still think that he looks a little uncomfortable. This is just eye test for me. Obviously, I haven't heard any anecdotes or anything like this, but he looks a little uncomfortable when he has the ball. A little like he's like, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't know if that's like him hearing pep in his head or what, but he has all the talent in the world. Some of these passes I'm seeing him hit when he really decides to put his mind to it are special, and along with his pace to make up in recovery is special. So yeah, I would not be opposed to seeing those two get a run.
For Kusanov, all I'll say is I just don't like him as a left center back. I don't think he's very comfortable with his left foot. That was the vibe that I was getting, was that it felt like he did not trust his left foot to make passes, which is scary when you play for
Yeah.
Manchester City. But I mean, Pep is usually pretty particular about like wanting to find left-footed players. This whole thing with Guardiola, like wanting to have him kind of play that role. So with a Stones Kusanov pairing, we might not see it all that often. And it could be a thing of more if we see Kusanov shift to right center back where he can use his right foot more. But I don't think Stones. Look, I don't. We've seen it was an almost identical goal, honestly, to the first goal that Spurs gave up, where the defense is stretched. There's a center back that's basically all the way at the touchline. The fullback's been pulled forward, and City lose the second ball. And it just is the whole team is now out of shape, and it's one center back having to essentially cover the back line with the other fullback trying to sprint over. It is so similar. The only thing that I'm going to say, and I was shocked at the level of effort DS put in tracking back. Shocked. And maybe he wasn't fully fit or something. I have no idea. But Stones catches up to and beats him by the time that goal is in the net. And that is crazy. And I'm not someone where I'm like banging down the door. This isn't, this is unacceptable. Sell him. Nothing like that. But that's strange. You're a mentality monster. That is your whole thing. Your whole thing is you're a mentality monster. That is like you are Mr. LinkedIn. That is your selling point. And to just be jogging, that was weird to me. It's not like anything I've seen. And that was the only thing for me where I was like, look, I'm a believer in you, but it was strange. It was concerning. And that's all I got. And I'm sorry. I know he's your guy, but it really
No,
freaked me out.
no, I think that that's very fair. I did see the jog. The jog is very concerning. That is, if you're going to find the fault for him, it's right there. And maybe that's the problem is I just didn't see very many people critiquing that as opposed to the other aspects of that. But yes, the jog is a problem. I'm just having trouble composing myself. You just call it the Gary V of center backs. That's pretty crazy.
He
But
basically is.
but that's it's true. He's out there to do that. He's out there to make sure goals don't go in. So I definitely see that. It does make you wonder why he didn't start. Maybe he wasn't fit. Maybe he just got dropped. I don't know. But there's definitely, like I said, neither one of them are without fault, and it would not completely surprise me to see both of them get dropped. It's really
Yeah.
interesting to me to think about where Ake's place is in the squad though, because I'm not really sure when he's going to get minutes when everybody's fit. But maybe they just aren't worried about that. Maybe he's content being covered this year and stuff like that, and seeing out his contract or whatever. But yeah, it's an interesting group, a group that's given us so much over the years and has built so much trust. I feel like we're starting to ask some pretty serious questions about them now.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine that like in April this is going to be like Kusanov is going to be starting a majority of matches at center back. Like I really would be surprised, but this does feel like a transitionary period, and I guess it's kind of how I want to shift this conversation a little bit. This summer alone, Kevin De Bruyne left, Ederson left, and Ilkay Gundogan again for the second time left. And it seems fairly obvious, but that's three of the players from 17-18 gone that were left. It is essentially Stones and Bernardo and a very young Phil Foden as all that is left of that squad, and even of like the treble winning squad. I mean, it's Holland, it's Rodri.
Your center backs,
Like, yeah, and
yeah.
and and then I mean, and Stones and Diaz. Like, it is. There's not a lot left, and that's the point where I worry is when you have multiple windows of, I don't want to say failed signings. Guardiola's not a failed signing. There are some failed signings, but I should say the windows overall, I don't think the windows they weren't failed windows. They brought in someone like Bardiol, clearly a success. Doku, while he hasn't been a absolute success, there are signs there that there's a good player. Sabinho, there are signs there that is a very good player. What's more worried is someone like Nunez, even to an extent, Kovacic was never meant to be like a major signing. That was a depth signing, and I think he's just had to play more than he's had to. But Phillips, Nunez, like those were players that were supposed to bolster the midfield and they failed. And so we've brought in now players like Cherky and Reinders, who I think are much better and will be better fits. But instead of them allowing to kind of bleed in, they now just have to play and they just have to immediately hit the ground running. And it makes me feel like potentially this could be a little bit more of like a 16-17 situation where it's just going to take a little bit of time for all of this to gel. But what I worry is that potentially, if it doesn't work, then what happens moving forward? And that's the part where I think it gets a little scary. It's unknown and it's anxiety. And that's a thing that as a City fan, I have not felt in a very long time. And it's quite weird.
Yeah, I'm Cheeky's biggest fan. I think that if there was a Cheeky fan club, I'd be the president. I've
Yeah.
never criticized, really to any degree, but you do have to look at some of the signings. I mean, you said Kovacic was a maybe. For me, Kovacic himself is not the issue. Like you said, as a squad, like depth piece, that's fine. But when you look at what his signing was made in lieu of that summer in terms of the other targets that we were going after and what that impact would have been going into right about now as a season, when you're looking at Declan Rice, you're looking at Jude Bellingham, you're looking at Paqueta. These are very different players to Mateo Kovacic in terms of not only their play style, but in terms of what they do to your squad outlook going forward. In terms of can you build around them? These guys are all pillars at the clubs that they're currently at. They would have been a pillar here that we would have been building around. And I don't know. I just think that, like you said, I, we got a couple of these wrong, but I don't want to say we got complacent, but it does feel like there was a bit of complacency maybe last summer, especially coming off of the four-peat in terms of the transfers that we were going to make. I mean, you're looking at a summer of Savinho and Gundogan after a summer of Kovacic and, Doku, and I just it's not the signings you would expect. If you're looking at like what Liverpool did coming off of the title versus what we did coming off of all these titles, it's a very different scenario. So
Yeah.
I just think there are different ways to handle it. I wasn't the biggest fan of how we handled it at the time, but obviously we're dealing with that now, as you said. So
Yeah,
just
I
got to
think
make up for it.
Liverpool spent more this window, I think, than City have in the last 6. That's 3 years.
Yeah, their spending
I
is
think
ridiculous. I
I
mean,
want to
650.
confirm that, but I I'm fairly certain that that is correct. And granted, Liverpool have not spent a ton over the last few years, but that's where it gets scary as Liverpool now seemingly have this squad that is built to compete, that is versatile, that can play multiple positions, that can compete in multiple fronts. That sounds familiar.
Arsenal too.
That sounds like, yeah, Arsenal as well. I mean, Arsenal spent a ton, although I don't, the amount of money Arsenal have spent to the players that have brought in this window is to me crazy.
Yeah,
But
heinous.
and I like Gyökeres. I don't know if Gyökeres is going to necessarily work out, but that's not the signing that I necessarily have a problem with from a money standpoint. I understand why they spent the money. We'll see. The Portuguese league can be sometimes really really solid signings can come from that. But when you look at the squad that they have, and then you look at the squad that City have on paper, I don't think there's a massive difference. I do think Liverpool's squad is probably stronger. I don't know if it's significantly like unbelievably stronger, but I definitely now they have the edge, especially with Isak coming in as well. Like it really can make it pretty shocking as to how City have handled this. And Pep talked about it. I'd mentioned it on the Wolves review. Pep had said that last season should have been a message to the club to see what happens when you don't bolster. So maybe there will be January spending. Potentially, January window is normally not particularly active window. Obviously, City spent a ton last year, but it's not really the norm. So more players, I'm assuming, are going to be coming in, but it does make me a little shocked to be in this situation. I don't know if, and look, I don't think City are going to be found guilty of 115. I don't. It's not that I think that they're innocent of 115. I want to make that really clear. I have no idea, but I trust like the Stefan Borisons and the people that actually know what they're talking about and how they've talked about this makes it me seem like it's very difficult for them to be found guilty. Yet how they're acting seems that the main focus for the last few years has been turning a profit, not necessarily bolstering the squad. I think they're doing both. And I don't think it's a like, oh, we're going to be guilty, but it might be we're doing both. We're hedging. We think we're going to be found innocent, but if we're not, we need to prepare ourselves to not be completely fucked in case a relegation is on the table. And I think both of those things are kind of happening at the same time. That is me, an uneducated moron's opinion on this, but
I
it's
was,
it's spooky.
yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought they were penny pinching. It feels like they are. It feels like they're being a little tight with the funds over the past few windows. I'm with you with everything in the analysis that I've seen and from everybody respected. It seems like it'd be a very dubious task to find them guilty of everything that they've been accused of. But maybe, like you said, it is a little bit of the hedging the bets. But I do think that it is starting to catch up with us a little bit of this sell to buy stuff that we're doing. I mean, you can only build so much talent in your squad like this. I think that our first 11 has definitely suffered and our squad depth has suffered as well. I think that's like you were talking about Liverpool in terms of their depth and being better. I'm not sure if their depth is better, but their first 11 is looking quite scary these days. And I think
Yeah.
that this top level talent is something that maybe we've sacrificed, maybe we haven't really gone for in the windows. We are out here breaking British transfer records every summer, even though our winning and our
Twice in one window.
yeah, twice in one window. I mean, if you look at how they're getting this money, okay, they've not spent in a while, sure, but us selling as well as we've sold should add up to this. And given the fact
Yeah.
that we've won so many Premier Leagues, we've won the Champions League, we've won all these other competitions with money, the money has to be there. The PSR has to be looking splendid, and we're not. we're not spending to that level. So it does make you wonder, like you said, maybe when this verdict comes down, if it is positive in our way, maybe we do see some serious spending in January or next summer. I think these are the long term outlooks. Obviously, it doesn't really matter for right now, but I think that City fans should probably have a little bit of faith that if this goes our way, maybe we'll see a bit of a return of the city of old in terms of spending and stuff like that.
I don't normally feel it's weird. It's weird for me to be this worried. It's weird for me to be this negative.
Same.
I'm I'm someone that before the treble win, I wrote an article. I remember that how many times Pep Guardiola have to show you this. Like this is I have full faith in the manager most importantly, and because of that then the squad. But little warning signs starting to show for me. And I think, look, if I want to take a thousand eye view, Guardiola, Kusanov, Savino, Bob, Cherky, Foden all have injuries to some extent. Ain't Nori, maybe not injured, but is not going to the international window to stay healthy. That is all freaky. When you combine with just the fact that it is an international window, we have someone like John Stones, who's been called up, who will probably play every match, who will probably play 90 minutes of every match. Holland, who has shouldn't say a history, but there are times where Holland's had to leave the Norway camps for fitness reasons. Diaz and Bernardo are going to be with Portugal. It's freaky, but it also makes me feel like a lot of it's going to be a wait and see. And after this international break, how many players come back? How many players are healthy? Because there is still so much time. There's so much time left in the season, but almost as nightmare of a start as you could imagine compared to where we were after the Wolves match.
Yeah, it feels like it just feels like a lot of the same issues as last year. I feel like we're having a lot of the same problems, and that wasn't supposed to happen given all the transfer ins and outs and the backroom staff ins and outs. This was like supposed to be solved, and maybe that's just too optimistic of a view to think that they're going to solve all of this with what, 4 Club World Cup games and a couple weeks of training, to just fix this squad. Maybe it is going to take our usual catastrophe beginning of season little stretch before we're able to pull ourselves out of the mud here. We've seen that before. I think that that's probably what I'm going to end up leaning on as my copium of choice, is just that, like, we've done this before. The manager has done this before so many times, and that there are, at least in the captain's group, still members of this squad that have done this multiple times before, that will be able to galvanize all the new squad players to have this same type of mentality. But like you said, it is concerning. You don't want to start off this way. You don't want to drop 2 games in a row like that, the way that we did too. It's extra demoralizing versus just getting played off the park and stuff like that, which almost you'd have preferred versus Brighton and something like that. So yeah,
When you look at table winners, when you look at the clubs who have won titles essentially for the last decade, barring the insane seasons, barring the Centurion season, the follow up to the Centurion season, and that Liverpool season, almost always it is between like 9 to 12 games where points are dropped. That is the level that you cannot go below if you want to win a title. We've already wasted 2 of those chances. Already wasted 20% of and their losses, not draws. And that's just the only thing of like, that's where it gets frustrating. It's not that it's over. There's still so much time left. There are a few more international breaks as well heading into this kind of winter period where City normally kind of wake up. But that's just the one is like, yes, it's going to happen. City are going to continue to drop points. And I just hope that people kind of keep that in that mind. It's like 9 to 12. We have 9 to 12 of these in a season. And you just, that's the one little, to use your word, copium that I'm going to be holding on to.
yeah, and I think maybe a little bit of extra little hope I could say is that this league is brutal, absolutely, and war first week to last week. Everybody in the league is so highly funded. I'm seeing Brentford buy 50 million or put 50 million pound bids into Dortmund attackers. Like we're living in a completely different world of the Premier League. So
It's a Super
maybe
League.
exactly, so one, I think that contributes to our start here. If you're not on it against any team in this league, you can lose. It doesn't matter. Sunderland are beating teams left and right, and they just got promoted. Like that's what the league is nowadays. And maybe that bonus will carry on to more teams dropping more points more often. So it'll give you more leeway in that regard. But it's certainly not something you want to bank on. So yeah, like you said, we really got to pick it up. You don't want to go beyond that 10 to 12 drop, points games type thing. So yeah, it's definitely definitely a super interesting time. We're gonna have to step it up.
I think that's it. I don't have much more to talk about in a composed way.
Yeah. It's all over. The sky is falling, dude. We're
Yeah.
never gonna win again. That's what's gonna happen.
I had that free like I rarely freak out. This City team has taught me to not freak out. I used to never think City would win the big match. I was so used to City never coming back, especially like pre-Pep era. And the last 4 or 5 years in particular have just totally changed my outlook on that. And this is one of the first times where like those old thoughts are creeping back.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like almost that feeling like before we won the Champions League, that feeling every late stage Champions League match beforehand where you're like, okay, what's going to go wrong this time? How are
Yeah.
we going to embarrass ourselves out here, as the best team in the world? How are we going to go and make it seem like we're not? I really do feel like it's like I get that kind of feeling right now when things start to shift in a match, like in around the 60th minute. I start seeing our midfield get ran past and stuff like that. It's oh, here we go again. It's always just like oh, you feel the team, and I almost wonder if the team on the pitch can feel that. To be honest,
They have to.
yeah, they do.
I guess I guess that's it. Look, I appreciate it once again. As always, thank you to Freddie and Jordan for allowing me to hop on the channel. Thank you to Phil Casso for joining. Let's try to stay positive, City fans. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Peace.